and welcome to Birth of a New Dimension. My name is Aurora. For the next hour, I'm going to speak about ideas of immortality and the afterlife and the death process and relate this to what I've been speaking about for the past 92 episodes or so of this show when I come on here each week and I speak about our trajectory of consciousness and how death is not part of how our lives were invented. That death is an invention, a new occurrence, and is not the intended format for what our journey was supposed to contain. Brief pause. So I often say on this show that death is the aberration, like the socially aberrant thing, the behavior or setup that is not supposed to be in existence, but is in existence. And I've spoken a lot about the time vortex. This is a simplified drawing or diagram that I often share that looks like a vortex in cross-section with the skinny, pointy top facing up at the top of your screen and the fat base at the bottom, kind of like a pyramid with sloping sides. And the sloping sides are comprised of a flowing membrane, like a waterfall of energy. And that waterfall of energy is a membrane between worlds, like between diverse realms. And it is also a separator of consciousnesses like, let's say, energy flowing in particular directions or having particular speeds. And it is also a realm that is presently occupied, like it's a membrane. And energy is supposed to simply flow through the membrane. However, there are beings that are stuck in the membrane. And that is very similar to like arterial blockages. If you could imagine fatty deposits that are lining the arteries of a person's body or their heart, and that impedes the proper blood flow. So these fatty deposits, and the fatty deposits in the person, the analogy of the human, are actually due to emotional blockages, emotional experiences or trauma or feelings that have not been properly felt and resolved. It's not just eating bacon or, grease or stuff like that and not exercising. If you have a properly running metabolism, you can eat all of the, lard and bacon that you need to, and it will not clog up your arteries because you are processing those emotions. So when we eat food, it's literally solidified light, it's solidified emotional energy, and if we do not process it and release or liberate that consciousness so that it can flow, it becomes a blockage. And so it can be an arterial blockage, or it can be adipose tissue, like fat on one's butt or something like that, or subcutaneous fat, or fat around people's organs. So the idea is that there's supposed to be a flow of energy through this membrane between worlds. However, due to circumstances, there are emotional blockages, entities that occupy that membrane and that have never flowed. And that's the basic backstory, and I speak about it on my Galactic History webinar, and I've spoken about it here, and I'll do the brief synopsis, that beings were emanated from the source, not on a bridge of love into organic, biological, multicellular containers like the ones that we are using, and I presume that that's who my audience are. No, instead, they emanated themselves into the physical realm. I'm sorry about the wind. I'm out here in my garden, it's a beautiful sunny day, and you know that I eat the sun and charge up my solar batteries. That's why I like to be out here. So I wait for the wind to die down for a moment. But the beings that emanated themselves or chose to leave the source, not on a bridge of love, came into the physical realm using physical artificial containers like technology. And this technology, it went awry, as it tends to do. And the beings over the course of several planets, destroying several planets within our solar system, lost their place to be and had to find a place to be. And they came into the human genetic code. And this is also backstory for why humans are having to ascend. It's actually reascend. It's understanding why your genes have been formatted as they presently are and why it's necessary to go back to the heights of consciousness and awareness and ability using this higher psychic faculties that humans have lost for, the entire recorded span of human history. For about the past 10 or 15,000 years, humans have not had access to their full higher faculties. And so humans have defined themselves as these limited beings. However, we have, as part of our birthright, a much greater untapped or unexplored potential. And the higher faculties are everything that rests upon the heart chakra and above. If you're built like a pyramid, there's your physical and then your emotional and then your daily waking intellect. And then on top of that, there is unconditional love. And that is literally a force field that is generated by the proper functioning of your heart. And it is the basis for, or the fuel for, the higher functioning faculties that include truth and insight and the connection to the divine, or the connection to the source, or that which is higher and slightly more organized than what we are presently experiencing. So the human genome was supposed to be shaped and arranged so that everyone has access to their higher faculties. However, it got squashed when invaders of consciousness came to this world, Earth. But when we speak about Earth, we're really speaking about the physical earthly realm, because there is a less dense, sophisticated realm that is like a little hidden place where some of the cultural remnants of the pre-catastrophic Earth culture remain. So we're really talking about into the denser physical realm. And when these invaders of consciousness came, it transformed the human genome and it transformed the format of our physical bodies. So now I'm going to go, and anyway, when that happened, some people's bodies died instantaneously and death was an invention. This is what I'm getting into, and then I'll get into Osiris in ancient Egypt. Before the invaders of consciousness came into this realm, every consciousness that came into the physical had an unbroken circuit or loop that maintained its connection to the source that emanated it, and then returned flawlessly to that source, which is also the destination. You could imagine a big giant loop, a big giant circle, big giant flower petal shape, where, if it's a daisy and the yellow center of the daisy is the source, and then the white petal comes out and bends around and then returns back to the source. It's exactly what we are supposed to do. And that is my definition of ascension. Ascension as a distinction from the literalist biblical interpretation or the Christian rapture, the idea of floating upwards, being removed from physical reality, going and living in the clouds, or heaven lives in the clouds. My real understanding of ascension is that one does not have to leave the physical reality in order to ascend. One retunes one's instrument. The change is a change of consciousness, and it is concomitant with a change in one's genetic structure. So when everybody's genes got squashed, everybody was taken out of that heavenly mental state or ascended mental state. And the place that I referred to, that's the cultural remnant of what Earth was before death was invented, this is called the realm of the ascended masters. It's known as inner Earth or hidden Earth or Agartha or Shambhala or Shangri-La. And this is the idea that it is a place where the culture that was on Earth, the pre-flood, worldwide, sophisticated culture that we could call Atlantis, or the mythological realm that existed then, that those beings saw what was coming in terms of invaders of consciousness, and some of them were able to create like a little virtual life raft, a cultural life raft, where they could keep alive their way of thinking, their way of existing, continuing to eat pure sunlight, and continuing to live in that way. And of course, their ranks have grown over the past 10,000 years as individuals have ascended to that level. So we're speaking now of meditators from the Far East. There are myths and legends of yogis and masters and saints, and not only from the Far East, but holy people from our entire world. And it's like stories of individual athletes who have performed great feats, lifted a heavy boulder or ran many, many miles. It's amazing that someone can accomplish that as an individual. It is an inspiration to all of us that we can actually train together. And what we are experiencing right now is planetary ascension. That would be like going to the gym as a group or running as a group and preparing for our marathon, which is actually our soul migration. And our soul migration does not necessarily mean that we leave the planet, fly off in a metal saucer. It does mean that we transport our consciousness. And this is how experts do star travel. And I've spoken about this quite a lot, that expert, sophisticated star cultures do not use a clank-clank metal spaceship to get from here to there. They use wings of pure consciousness. The fuel is unconditional love. And the vehicle is your body, your birthday suit. And the physical body in the ascension process, when you leave this realm, so you can be in this realm and be an ascended person in a heavenly state with your genes whirling and twirling away in this higher dimensional format, and then your body matter can transform. It can change state directly. This means instead of having to go through the intermediary stages of like having a physical body and either liquefying through decomposition and being eaten and then transformed by bacteria and, small, tiny little animals, instead or cremated, like if you add enough energy, if you add enough heat to your body, your physical matter will transform from solid directly into plasma and gas. You can also make that transition of state change by the addition of energy. Instead of heat energy, like in a cremation process, it is the addition of awareness energy to be kindled with awareness. And in so doing, change the basic definition of what matter is, because matter is light that has the privilege of going slower than the speed of light. And that the idea is that matter can change the rate at which it is moving and become closer to the format of light. And I speak about that with the analogy of either jumping the synaptic gap, a neural impulse that jumps the synaptic gap, or the electron at the subatomic level, reaching the next level of excitation from one electron shell to the next electron shell. And that's a very good analogy because it's a leap that must be done all at once, and the way that the electron does it is by saving its energy. Like imagine it has an energetic savings account, or it puts pennies in its piggy bank, and every day it saves its energy, and then one day it has enough energy to blast off into the next level of excitation. And this is what we are doing with our ascension process. So it does not mean that if you are good boys and girls, you will be patted on the head by Lord God Jehovah and then fly upwards into a cloudy, blue sky, heavenly realm where angels play the harp. That is not what I'm describing, and that literal biblical interpretation or religious doctrine interpretation is much closer to what I am cautioning against. Mind traps or traps of consciousness, or like the beings that have been stuck on the membrane, the fatty deposits that are preventing energy from flowing. This is all energy that needs to flow instead of being trapped. And I've been speaking about on the most recent broadcasts of this show how there is an extraterrestrial system of hardware, like technology, that uses as the fuel or power, like the way we have battery power to make it go, it uses entrapped consciousness, trapped and victimized consciousness that is not free to go where it wishes to go and do what it wishes to do. And the traps are created in life, in the experiences and belief systems that are like software programs that are installed into your organic hardware, your brain during your life, what you're taught to believe, your religious doctrine, then causes at death your consciousness, instead of flowing freely, to be trapped like in a whirlpool or a maelstrom, spinning around endlessly instead of flowing to where it is supposed to go. And these broadcasts, what I speak about, and the shape of the Flying Rainbow Lasagna itself is intended to end that practice and for all energy to now be able to flow where it needs to flow without any impediment or blockage. So let me do a little bit of changing the topic or veering the topic of conversation here towards ancient Egypt and Osiris, because I've been aware of the ancient Egyptian myth or narrative story of Osiris and Isis and Horus and Set for quite a long time, and I recently revisited that narrative structure with my newer understanding of technology, extraterrestrial technology, invaders of consciousness, invaders of the genetic code. And I'd like to share with you my increased understanding that I see this myth and the characters in this myth now as being representatives of culture, not necessarily as individuals. So the basic story is that Osiris and Isis were gods that lived on Earth, and they lived in the time before death was invented. Does this sound familiar yet? And that there was a brother, Osiris had a brother named Set, and that he came from Mars, and that he killed Osiris. And the pieces of Osiris's body were chopped up, scattered throughout Earth, and that Isis was very bereaved. She went about gathering up the scattered pieces and assembled it as best she could into the person that she remembered, and wove it together like a mummy, with wrappings, and you could not find the penis, so she had to create an artificial penis, and she made love to the being, the Osiris corpse, and in doing so, not only created a child, but reanimated Osiris. And so first of all, and what happened was she became pregnant with Horus, the hawk god, and Osiris, even though he was reanimated, was determined by the other gods in the hall of Mat. That's M-A'-A-T, Mat meaning balance or order in the cosmos, that these other gods had to uphold balance and order in the cosmos, and they said, technically you're dead. You're the first dead person. Congratulations, you have just invented death. You cannot return to the land of the living. So this is, in Egyptian cosmology, the invention of the realm of the afterlife and the invention of mortality for humans. So it used to be, in ancient Egypt, according to this myth, there was the heavenly realm of the gods and goddesses. Then there was the realm on earth, like where Isis and Osiris lived. But there was never any death. Death had not yet been invented. And it was with the death of Osiris that the netherworld, the underworld, was created or invented, and Osiris then became the ruler of the dead and the ruler of the underworld. So now let me deconstruct this myth with my new understanding, like lenses of my new understanding, looking through this new lens. I look at Osiris as being representative of the culture and civilization of Atlantis. And this was not just one continent, not just the continent of Atlantis. It was a worldwide culture. So a culture that extended into what is presently determined to be Egypt, was on every continent. And every continent interacted with one another. It was a worldwide culture. And that the invaders into our genes, into the human genome, came from Mars. That was where the most previous planetary disaster happened, because they also harmed planet Malduk or Marduk, which is now the asteroid belt, and something bad also happened on Venus. And I simply do not have the correct order of events to share with you in terms of being an impeccable historian. So since I don't have that order of events, will not share that information. I'll just say something happened to a couple of the planets in our solar system, and that Earth was then the next victim or the next person that was attacked. So in the narrative structure of the myth, that Set came from Mars and came to Egypt and killed Osiris. So that's a very good analogy for the culture that was on Mars, coming from there to Earth and destroying or harming or cutting up into many pieces the culture that was here on Earth. And we can now look at Isis as a benevolent extraterrestrial culture that was, remember, what we call the culture of Atlantis, or the worldwide sophisticated culture, was not some isolated backwater that didn't communicate with the rest of either the galaxy or the cosmos, like many other galaxies and many other places across time. It was a sophisticated place, like New York City talks to everyone. They don't just speak to their own little realm of 90 miles or whatever. New York City is a sophisticated city. It talks to everyone on the whole globe. So Isis I'm interpreting as the connection to other star cultures, and that these other star cultures saw the destruction to what happened to the people on Earth and consciousness on Earth, gathered up the remnants of that culture as best they could, and put it together into a new format, gave birth, quote unquote, to a new format. We are not looking at this in terms of literal birth, like mommy plus daddy equals baby. We're looking at two cultures coming together and creating a new format of life. And we can now look at Horus, the offspring that was in result of Isis and Osiris and their union coming together. That Horus would be like the present shape of physical humanity. People who have to eat physical food and, live in a physical house and do not have full access to their higher telepathic faculties. And according to the Egyptian narrative structure or myth, so Osiris became the head of the underworld or the netherworld, and Horus became the ruler of the physical world. And Horus and Set were constantly at odds with one another. And this sounds, first of all, this sounds a lot like the foundation for all Judeo-Christian mythology and narrative structure. It's because it is. And Set sounds suspiciously like Satan. It's because there's a lot of parallel thought structure going on there, not coincidence. And the understanding of constant duality being the result of this change to the human genetic structure. So I will not offer you and describe in such excruciating detail a problem without offering you a solution. So if the problem is the primary trauma of Earth was invaded, invaders came into the genetic code, invaders changed on a basic level the way that this body acts and can function in the world, and the way that consciousness can function and perceive in this world, then it is now necessary to speak about the antidote or the solution, which is called the flying rainbow lasagna. And this is my own invention. It's my own spontaneous creation in the moment that I created. In this world, the time would be called October 8th of 2001. However, where I was coming from, we could consider it no time, a world outside, not submerged in time. I came from being not submerged in time to being submerged in time. And the portal through which I came is called the flying rainbow lasagna. And this is a way of rearranging the genetic structure of this physical body so that I, as a non-physical, non-terrestrial, abstract consciousness, could come and be in this body. And also, I'll make the distinction, if you're new to my broadcast, no, I am not a body snatcher. No, all of this is consensual. So it wasn't like I shopped around. It wasn't like I said, whose body can I jump into today? And it also wasn't like I said, let me kill someone and take their body or overpower their will or in any way take something that isn't mine. What actually happened was the previous occupant of this body was literally psychically attacked and murdered by Satan or by satanic forces, by the extraterrestrial malevolent network of technology that runs off of trapped and victimized consciousness. If you're not aware that this exists, I'm sorry to have to educate you that this exists. Sit down, Johnny, sit down, Susie. I will tell you about the existence of pure evil. And this evil in our world is described as black magic, or the use of artificial technology, like based upon sacrifice of life or sacrifice of human sexuality or energy, like life force energy, that it is the distortion or corruption of that life force energy and using it in order to distort and corrupt events and timelines. So if time is a beautiful tapestry, the black magic or malevolent energy structure or malevolent technology is like one of those little seam rippers that you might, I don't know if you've ever done sewing of any sort. It's like a little hook, a little tool that you can use to rip out the loops of the embroidery. And imagine just going around and ripping out the beautiful embroidery of the cosmos, changing the shape of the fabric, changing the picture that the embroidery makes, and being able to change the structure of what is in existence. So that is what happened to the previous occupant of this body. She is like a loop of embroidery that was mercilessly cut by the little tool of black magic. And instead of this physical body dying and decomposing because it no longer had a consciousness to occupy it and keep it in a format for life, a miracle happened. And the miracle is I was able to invent a new shape. The shape is called the flying rainbow lasagna. It can be described as a hyper-torus or a higher dimensional torus. And if you speak math, what cube is to tesseract, torus is to flying rainbow lasagna. So by taking this body and its genetic material and placing it in a higher dimensional context, I, as extraterrestrial abstract consciousness, was able to come and inhabit this body. And there was also another miracle that took place, literally a force field of grace, like a netting or network, was put around the body because it took some amount of time for the flying rainbow lasagna and the restructuring to happen. It was not instantaneous. And if some force field were not placed around the body, keeping the cells alive and in harmonious structure so that the flying rainbow lasagna could take its time to do this restructuring, it would not have been possible for me to do that. So several miracles or events that were so unlikely that they could be considered far outliers had to occur in order for this to happen. That is what the restructuring of genes does. It makes things that one would consider to be impossible now possible. That's what a miracle is. Something that you thought was impossible actually ended up being possible. This is how we can also describe when miraculous healings occur, like the spontaneous remission of a disease, like a tumor or some congenital defect that is able to be healed. We are understanding that this is a transformation that takes place on a genetic level and as part of a change in timelines, because our genes are the integument that ties us from moment to moment. So I've spoken about how timelines are like trains comprised of individual train cars, and those train cars are individuated moments. Each moment is the length of the Planck length, or like the smallest length that we can cut something into and still have it be time. Like if we have a length of French bread, how skinny can we cut the slice of bread and still call it a slice of bread and not have it be something that would just be, one particle or like a totally disintegrated thing. So we have these individuated moments that are the smallest moments that we can chop time up into. And then in much the same way that a film strip works, like film, old-fashioned movie film, not digital film as many people currently use, but old-fashioned films are made by many, many still images that are tied together with the integument of your perception. This is called persistence of vision. It is the ocular phenomenon that happens when frames are flashed at 26 frames per second or faster. And then your system of perception, your brain and your eyeballs and your neurology, all work together to tie together those individual static images into a seamless flowing continuum that is called a moving picture. And the original word for this way of doing this was called the zoetrope, Zoetrope. It means wheel of life. And it was in a pretty old school form of animation that was created from a rotating drum with slits cut in the outside of it and placing a series of still frame pictures on the inside of it, kind of like a flip book. If you've ever done a flip book on the edge of your math book or something like that, This is old school animation, and you spin the wheel and you look through the slits in the side and it creates a form of animation. You can see the movement. This is exactly what is happening from moment to moment with your perception. And the spinning wheel, zoetrope literally means wheel of life, like to give life to something, to give movement to something. The spinning wheel is the spinning movement of your DNA. Your DNA is not a static object. I speak about this all the time. It's not an X-shaped chromosome. That is only for a very brief period of its life. For most of its time, it is a whirling, twirling, unfurled, vibrating string that is dancing. And it is constantly being spliced and unspliced and pirouetting and do-si-doing and hopping to and fro and tying itself in knots and then untying itself. And this dance maneuver that it is doing is the process of tying one moment to the next moment. Or it is the process of transferring your consciousness from one body to the next body. Because that's how you have to begin to understand this. The train cars of reality. So I'm out here in my garden. I usually am sitting in a room, and I will speak about the room of 1201 and the room of 1202 and the room of 1203. These are all separate and distinct rooms. I've had to transfer my consciousness from the room of 1201 to 1202 to 1203 all through time, all through the first 30 minutes of this broadcast have been filled with my consciousness transferring itself over and over and over into new versions of my body. My body is not the same body right now that it was at 12:01 when I began the broadcast. I have metabolized glucose, I have breathed, I have sweated, I have done all sorts of things, I have excreted, and now my body is slightly different, and I've expended energy, and I've also learned new things. I'm in a different format. And my whirling and twirling and do-si-doing, hopping back and forth genetic structure is the dance movement, the integument. Integument means what ties things together, like your tendons and your skin, what holds your body together, or what holds events together. That your DNA, one's DNA, is the subcellular structure that ties you from moment to moment. Now understanding how profound it is to be able to be aware of our DNA and begin to control our DNA. Because this is not just controlling the shape of the physical expression of your body. Like, yes, theoretically, then, as you change from one body to the next body from moment to moment, you could change into the body that is formatted in a new way. Theoretically, if you begin to understand this is how spontaneous remissions and spontaneous healings happen. You jump from a body that is formatted in one structure into a body that is formatted in a different structure. And the thing that allows you to jump is the dance of your genes, and the jump is analogous to the neural impulse making the synaptic leap across the synaptic gap, and also the jump of the excited electron making the quantum leap from one level of excitation to the next level of excitation in the electron shells. So let's speak now about immortality, about our ideas of immortality, because this is the primary software implant that is determining what happens to the trajectory of one's consciousness when one dies or exits the physical body. So I spoke about the Egyptian myth and Osiris and the invention of death. I speak about this on every week's broadcast, saying death is the aberration. I reinforce this over and over because we really do learn through repetition, just like learning a song. I play a song over and over on the piano and learn it, with my fingertips through repetition. So death is not what we are supposed to do. Death is like playing a sour note with the instrument of one's body and being out of tune with the cosmic symphony. Literally, life is the cosmic symphony. We are so blessed, and again, I address all of us who are alive in the physical body. We are so blessed to be alive in the physical body. Our consciousnesses are conforming to the basic structures of basic patterns of energy as it flows in the cosmos. Our physical structures, our cells, our metabolism, the trajectory of our awareness, what we believe, all of that is what allows us to be alive. If we deviate too much or distort those patterns too much, then we are no longer able to be part of the cosmic symphony. If we are doing what we're supposed to be doing in life, in our experience in the physical realm, then we stay in tune. It's like if you eat the right things, think the right thoughts, go the right places, do the right things, be on the right timelines, then you get to stay in tune. Your body stays, quote unquote, alive. If you do not do the right things, do not think the right things, act in the right way, go in the right places, be on the right timelines, then your body gets out of tune. And out of tune is not merely disease. Like we could all imagine if you ate nothing but donuts, all day long, then eventually your body would get very out of tune. And if you got out of tune enough, you would die. But I'm also speaking about you could eat a perfectly balanced diet and be, as fit as an Olympic athlete. But if you are placed, on a battlefield in front of a lot of bullets or cannonballs whizzing by, then you're not on the right timeline to continue to participate in the symphony of life. Your bullets and cannonballs will destroy your perfectly formed body. So that has to do with being on the right timeline. So all of this has to do with the software programs or belief structures, the mental programs that we ingest during our time in the physical realm and during the time of building our ego. The Egyptians felt of the time that we were in life, in the physical body, that it was like we were building a ship, like a raft or a bark, as they would sail down the Nile in a bark. And if you built it well and all of your planks fit together well, then you had a good boat and your boat wouldn't sink. And that is the idea that throughout one's life, one builds the belief system in a good format, in a way that is structurally sound. And all of the planks of the belief system fit together effectively so that when it's time to set sail, and that means set sail on your cosmic voyage, on the soul migration of transporting your consciousness from one place to another. So this is not set sail literally. So this is why I'm making the distinction, no clank metal vehicles that you need to get into in the sky. This is a journey of consciousness. And you create your structure or your vessel for journeying while you are in life, and then at the moment of death, we would consider that embarkation. However, the idea is not to die. If one dies, we can consider that to be not successfully reaching this point of ascension. So here's my basic understanding, that in the time before human genes were changed, we'll call it the mythological time of Atlantis, everybody ascended. And that ascension process was witnessed and it was expected. You came into the realm, you had a physical body, and then eventually you left the physical body through transformation and restructuring, changing state directly and going back to the source, going back to sunlight. And that after death was invented and created, the Egyptians tried to create a form of technology, mummification, to preserve the corpse in the way that some of the ascension processes seem to preserve a corpse. This is how we can also understand the stories, the anecdotal one-off stories of masters from the Far East who transformed, some of it is called transforming into their rainbow body, which I find to be incredibly poetic and beautiful. There's a whole book that is called Painting Your Rainbow Body that is written by a practitioner from the Far East of Tibetan Buddhism, and speaks about not only examples from the far distant past, let's say many thousands of years ago, people who were said to have achieved their rainbow body, but also monks and nuns of a more recent time, within the past 100 years, who were witnessed changing their bodies. And some of them were said to leave behind nothing. Some of them were said to leave behind relics, such as their hair or their fingernails or some aspect of a piece of bone. And some of them are said to have left behind a shrunken corpse, like a shrunken, tiny, doll-sized version of what their body was. So I use that in order to understand that the ascension process can either be, a total transformation, a total state change, can also cause, the shrinkage of physical matter and the transformation of what that matter is, and that the Egyptians tried to create the artificial process of mummification in order to achieve and preserve the physical body in the way that the ascension process used to do naturally. So again, now we're talking about cultural remnants, like if you have a particular practice, you're no longer an ancient Israelite wandering in the desert, but you still have the cultural practice of washing your hands before you touch a prayer book. You haven't actually been out there touching your livestock all day, but you are going through the ritual of doing this. So that is the idea that this is a cultural remnant of remembering that it is important to preserve the body as a part of the journey of consciousness. So the structure of your mind, the structure of your thought system and your beliefs and your awareness and what you are passionate about and what you really feel and believe in has everything to do with what will happen to you upon death. And in the ancient Egyptian world, coming right out of that previous memory of the culture where everybody ascended, the entire focus of the Egyptian culture was on ascension, this immortality, this eternal life, to the point of diminishing or devaluing or deprioritizing the events and occurrences and opportunities in the physical realm. Like, this has also been translated in the Judeo-Christian world into the idea of, receiving reward in heaven. However, I'm telling you that these software programs have become more and more distorted over time. Just like the game of telephone, as information is passed on over many generations, it loses clarity. So initially, after the fall of consciousness, we have the ancient Egyptian culture that is keeping alive not only the story of Isis and Osiris and Horus and Set and the origins of the struggle, but also the ancient Egyptian mystery school kept alive teachings of meditation techniques. That is where the technique called the Merkaba comes from. I didn't make it up or invent it. It is ancient knowledge that's been handed down. It's like storing something in the freezer for a very long time and has finally been taken out and defrosted and prepared as food for this cultural moment now. Because we really need this nourishment right now. The information and ideas of Merkaba means light body vessel, and this is a type of visualization and energetic technique. Instead of calling it a technology, let's call it a technique. That's what a dance movement is, or a new rhythm, or a new song, or a new shape like the flying rainbow lasagna. These are new concepts, they're new ideas, they're techniques, and they're something that can be disseminated or shared with other people. Once one person has invented a square, you can have as many squares in the world as you want to. It doesn't take away from the original squareness of the first square to make many more squares. So that is how I feel about the flying rainbow lasagna shape. I'll go a little bit into lasagna because this is a new invention creation, and it is the solution or the antidote to the challenge that humanity has been facing since our genes were diminished in their functioning. And I use myself and my own body as a template. This is how real magic is done. First of all, it is not done as an outsider or some kind of carpetbagger swooping in and, in people who are in vulnerability taking over in some way. It's not that at all. It is really coming down to, quote unquote, the front lines, or coming into the physical realm and into embodiment in order to have an impact on this level of density or in this realm. It's like saying if you want to vote, you have to be a citizen of the place, the nation that you wish to be powerful and, affect that culture. So if I wish to affect earthly culture, this realm of duality and this level of density, it is not appropriate for me to merely wave my magic wand, sitting on a cloud somewhere else in a world of pure abstraction. It is appropriate for me to actually come into the physical realm and do this with my own genes. And again, I do not impose this on anyone else. I don't force you to dance like a flying rainbow lasagna. However, I am a very loud or persistent dancer, and we are all affecting one another. And my dance over the past 15 years, the energy that I emit has become more coherent and more powerful, and I'm also not the only one doing it. So I dance in partnership. Even though the Flying Rainbow Lasagna is a partnerless dance, like some dances require a partner, like the tango or the waltz. But some dances, like the Watusi or the twist, you can do on your own. You do not require a partner. So the Flying Rainbow Lasagna is a partnerless dance. You can simply oscillate your own energy structure and your own genetic code in this format and thereby be free and achieve freedom. That is huge. It means if you're a female, you do not need a male. If you're a man, you do not need a woman. It's not like making a baby where it's like, oh, the sperm and the egg need to come together. It's not like that at all. Or to make a seed or to make a new thing. Please don't be stuck in the biological, literal realm of duality. That's why this shape is what it is. If it were something that required, a partner, then it would not be able to actually happen. It's like a spontaneous mutation. It is something that spontaneously arises. And so that means that in terms of transforming your own genetic structure, you do not need an outside deity. You do not need mommy or daddy's permission. You do not need President Obama's permission. You do not need God or Jehovah's permission or Lord Jesus or any Lord Krishna or Lord Shiva or Mother Mary or any ancient African spirit. I am just trying to say to you that the Flying Rainbow Lasagna is a tool for total self-empowerment. And this is the new stage of evolution that we are empowering. That we are empowering is good, but not the word I was looking for. That we are embodying. Our evolution is not merely our biological evolution, like going from a tadpole to being an amphibian, to being a mammal, or, something like that, being a dinosaur. No, our evolution is the evolution of consciousness. And you are not beholden to this earth body or this earth form. You do not have an obligation to, have a baby so that the next generation can have 6 toes or 4 toes or violet eyes or, webbed feet or whatever characteristics you will pass on to the next generation. You are beholden or obligated to be totally authentic and true to your soul. This is why I call this the soul migration. Who you are on a level beyond your biological container, beyond who you are in this moment, because your definition of self should be dilated to encompass the many different versions of you within one life and the many different versions of you that are living parallel lives that all tie together as part of one energetic format. That all of your time vortices come together in these energy centers or chakra shapes that involve other lives. So you are not just this person sitting in this chair on this day. You are also at the same time concurrently other people living other lives, having other realizations that are parallel to what you are presently experiencing. So your obligation is for the total uplift, evolution of your consciousness. It is not that you have to make sure that the human biological structure of having one face and 2 arms and 2 legs goes on, or that you carry on your family name, or that you carry on your religious traditions. That's why I say you don't need mommy or daddy's permission. When you begin to apply the Flying Rainbow Lasagna oscillation to your genetic structure, there will be all sorts of voices. I'm predicting, because this is what I experienced. All sorts of voices will come up and say, stop it. Whatever you're doing, stop. Red caution flags. Go back. Don't go any further. You're not allowed to do that. Don't touch those switches. Don't press those buttons, because you are literally transforming and rearranging the structure that was handed down to you from many ancestors. And those many ancestors all left their mark or left their information in the genetic structure. And it is up to you. You get to choose what comes with you in each moment. You get to edit your genetic structure in each moment and choose what teachings, what belief systems, what comes with you. Hey, if you'd like to leave behind the Jewish or Catholic guilt, you can do it, because guilt is literally an emotional vibration that prevents genes from dancing in these blissful and joyous patterns that bring us into the mental realm of ascension. The feelings of when one's genes are reweaving into these higher dimensional formats, you will feel bliss and euphoria and joy and good feelings. And these are not false feelings or louche or whatever. People are coming up with different terms for like being milked of emotions. Like if you watch a sappy Hollywood movie and it's, clawing at your heartstrings, this is not that type of milking of your emotions. It is true happiness. It is true bliss. When I do my Flying Rainbow Lasagna meditations here in the garden, in the sunlight, and when I achieve these, it is a deep state of peace. It is a deep state of harmony and being well situated within the context of the structure of life, the symphony of life. And that it's also something that I would wish for everyone. That is why I call the Flying Rainbow Lasagna open source code. It is just like the open source software movement in computer programming. When you have a good idea, instead of sitting on top of it and trying to sell it for $1 million, you share it freely with others. Everyone can benefit from it. You do ask for the credit as the inventor of it. You ask to be included in future projects that utilize your invention. That is how I'm approaching the transformation of this physical realm. This show is called Birth of a New Dimension because we are all literally, collectively, along with the planet and the cosmos, working together to give birth to a new dimension. And the new dimension is comprised of a new form of stuff. Instead of what we see around us, the world of matter, and having a separate world of energy. And the two divided by this membrane of awareness or belief system or understanding. Our new world that we are going to enter into and cohabitate in is a world where spirit and matter are one. We have resolved the duality. No longer is it the world of spirit people. Remember the invention of death? Remember how Osiris was created as the lord of the underworld, the netherworld, where people go when they die? No longer will we have a distinction between the realm of the living and the realm of the dead. The people who are purely made of spirit and the people who are made of physical bodies that are instruments that we play in the symphony of life will now be able to interact again. And the people of the deep antiquity and our descendants of the future who don't even exist yet will all be acting together and will all be communicating together. It is perhaps a little bit beyond one's present level of imagination to even conceive of what it would be like to live in that form. I'll go a little bit further because we're rearranging our genes when we do these imaginings. Imagine if when you looked at something and thought a thought about the thing would transform. Like right now I'm looking at the steps that lead down to my garden. Imagine if by looking at those steps, I could think a thought and transform them. I could transform their shape or their color or whether they're there or not by using my perception and my mind. So this is a totally different new world that we are entering into. The first thing that we are learning to transform with our mind is our physical containers, our bodies. And that's appropriate because that's what you are in ownership of. That's like your private room. It's your private place. And it's your private boundaries. You can do whatever you wish to do with your genetic structure and with your body. That's why you don't need my permission or President Obama's permission. This is about total freedom. And that is the new world that we are entering into is a realm of total freedom, ending all of this slavery. And the entire system of black magic and extraterrestrial technology that uses the harnessing of consciousness and the harnessing of life force energy against its will, that is all presently being dismantled. Literally, as I'm recording this, that is what is going on. We could call it a battle or a war, or we could call it a development and a birth. And that is what is going on. The Flying Rainbow Lasagna is allowing those maelstroms or whirlpools or stuck places to now have energy that flows. And the consciousnesses that were stuck in that network are now becoming able to flow where they need to go, which is basically back to the source. And guess what? Your own genes have been affected by these unwanted hijackers or beings that are riding along inside of your genetic structure. When you Flying Rainbow Lasagna and transform your genes, you're kicking out all of the unwanted passengers, getting rid of everyone who didn't buy a ticket and doesn't belong inside of you. And that way, you are getting to choose. You are an artist of your reality, an artist of your personality, an artist of your belief system. And you can consciously create your vessel or your raft to be able to sail forward. And we sail forward through time. Death is not the end, and ascension does not mean you have to leave this world. It does not mean that you have to go somewhere else. Ascension means that you have transformed your body and your consciousness, and that eventually, yes, you will change state and make the, quantum leap to the next electron shell. However, it begins with this transformation on a cellular level of being able to literally dance and vibrate your genes in a new dance, in a new format. So again, end of this broadcast, check out my website, flyingrainbowlasagna.com, where you can actually see the Flying Rainbow Lasagna and animations and get to understand this more. Please continue to tune in and join me as we are giving birth to this new dimension.